Donald Trump pardoned Ross Ulbricht, and suddenly libertarians everywhere are pinching themselves to see if it's real. Trump, on day 2 of his second term, decided to add Libertarian hero to his unpredictable resume. It didn't happen on day 1 as promised, but who cares? He had to keep the suspense alive, like a season finale of The Apprentice. This move has set off celebrations, debates, and probably a few heated conversations on Reddit. Ross Ulbricht, the guy behind Silk Road, is finally out of prison. Your typical MAGA might say, I don't know who Ross Ulbricht is, but operating a dark web marketplace where narcotics are sold seems kind of bad. I respect that stance, but our politicians and oligarchs did the exact same thing, except they actually violated children. So even if this is your position, my response is Ross doesn't get 2 life sentences and 40 years until they do. In case you missed it, Silk Road was like Amazon, but for people who thought, what if Prime shipping included MDMA? Ross, or Dread Pirate Roberts, as he called himself online, ran this dark web marketplace with an ethical code. No hitmen or child exploitation, unspeakable content allowed, just drugs, banned goodies, fake IDs, and other stuff you wouldn't bring up at Thanksgiving dinner. The law didn't share his moral distinctions, though. In 2015, he was hit with 2 life sentences and 40 extra years, just to make sure. During his sentencing, Judge Catherine Forrest dismissed Ross's argument that Silk Road reduced harm by moving drug transactions online. Ross claimed the platform cut out street violence and created a safer, controlled environment for buyers and sellers. Forrest, however, called this perspective a privileged fantasy, arguing that no street-level dealer had ever made such claims. Apparently, to Forrest, offering a controlled environment to reduce violence was just Ross flaunting his privilege, because who needs fewer stabbings when you've got talking points? The idea behind Ross's argument during sentencing was simple. By taking drug deals off the streets and into a controlled online space, Silk Road minimized the risk of violence and reduced the dangers typically associated with unregulated in-person transactions. Instead of engaging with this logic, Forrest decided to play the part of woke judge extraordinaire, turning what should have been a discussion about harm reduction into a TED Talk on socioeconomic privilege. She even spent part of the sentencing defending U.S. drug laws, twisting logic to pretend that 2 life sentences plus a cherry on top of an additional 40 years, along with the 2 life sentences, were somehow the best way to handle a first-time nonviolent offender. It was less about justice and more about virtue signaling, but from a bench instead of Twitter. Trump's decision to pardon Ross Ulbricht didn't come out of nowhere. It took years of hard work. Whether you care about Ross or not, we all can learn by studying the politics played by the Mises Caucus libertarians to get what they wanted. This is about Ross, but I'm happy for Angela McArdle. She's been grinding nonstop, showing respect even to folks who did not deserve it. She earned this. From Reno Reset to helping Ross Ulbricht walk free, this story feels like it is made for Netflix. Reno Reset, a pivotal moment led by Michael Heiss and Angela McArdle, realigned the Libertarian Party's focus toward bold, unapologetic advocacy for liberty, setting the stage for victories like this. Trump promised this back in 2024 during the Libertarian National Convention. That's right, the same guy who built his brand on law and order decided to side with a dude who made Bitcoin mainstream for buying illegal mushrooms, forbidden fungi. Libertarians loved it. For years, they've argued that Ross's sentence was an insane overreaction. He created a platform that let people make their own choices. Apparently, that was his real crime, giving adults too much freedom. Libertarian Party Chair. Angela McArdle teamed up with Libertarian heavyweights Dave Smith, Robbie the Fire Bernstein, and Clint Russell, creating what can only be described as the Avengers of Ross advocacy. Their mission? Convince the world that running a website isn't the same as dealing drugs or hiring hitmen, no matter how much the prosecution insisted otherwise. Sure, the government threw out wild accusations like Ross was auditioning for a mob movie. They claimed he paid for hits on people threatening to expose Silk Road users, like a disgruntled employee and a Canadian trying to extort him. Never mind that these accusations fell apart in court faster than Sam Bankman-Fried's reputation at a crypto conference. Imagine trying to wear a suit made of paper towels. That's how embarrassing these claims were. None of it stuck, but that didn't stop the prosecution from spinning rumors like they were gunning for an Emmy in creative fiction. Those rumors spread like a bad meme, ensuring Ross was painted as some crypto kingpin, blockchain boss, with a side hustle in mafia cliches. And yet Ross managed to avoid being swallowed by that narrative entirely, thanks to a libertarian movement that saw through the noise and focused on the bigger picture. To them, Ross wasn't a criminal, he was a scapegoat, a symbol of what happens when you step on the government's toes. To the libertarian movement, Ross wasn't just a guy who got a raw deal. He became the poster child for government overreach. His punishment was less about justice and more about sending a message. Don't mess with the establishment, especially if you're about to make Bitcoin look cooler than cash. Silk Road proved that Bitcoin wasn't just for nerds, it could undermine traditional currencies and centralized control. That kind of innovation tends to ruffle feathers, especially when you're selling Molly, aka rave sprinkles, on the side. Reactions to the pardon are all over the map. Libertarians are toasting with Bitcoin memes and tweets of, "I told you so," while law enforcement circles are looking around like someone just deleted their favorite surveillance tool. Critics can stew all they want. Trump delivered on his promise. And really, it's not like this happened because Trump was obsessed with Silk Road's place in history. It happened because he leaned into libertarian support and with a flick of a pen, turned a controversial case into a headline-grabbing win. And then there's Lynn Ulbricht, Ross's mom. If you're not familiar, she's basically the Joan of Arc of the Free Ross movement. For over a decade, she's been fighting tooth and nail to get her son out of prison, making speeches, rallying support, and refusing to give up. Now, she's not just a mom, she's a living legend. Not everyone in the Libertarian Party is throwing confetti. Trump wasn't exactly everyone's guy, and the anti-Mises caucus leftist libertarians let everyone know it loudly. These are the same people who went scorched earth trying to turn Angela McArdle's life into a real-world soap opera, all because inviting Trump to the Libertarian Party was apparently their hill to die on. And now, watching them twist themselves into knots, trying to explain why they weren't wrong, is almost as entertaining as watching a cat try to use a treadmill on TikTok. I thought Trump was going to renege on the deal because he got booed. I was wrong, but I never stopped supporting the Mises caucus, and their thought process was always sound. And now, obviously, proven right. Freeing Ross isn't even on my list of priorities. Never was, but I have a fondness for the Mises caucus. Those are the folks I'm rooting for right now. Trump didn't just save Ross. He gave J6ers a second chance. And speaking of TikTok cat videos, Trump even kept that alive. Even though TikTok had to ban the oh-so-dangerous phrase, "Free Palestine," in order to survive in the United States of Israel market. So you know what you do? Just chisel Trump onto Mount Rushmore already, and let's do it right. Slap a tiny hat on him. Even if these leftists disguised as libertarians admitted how spectacularly off base they were, it wouldn't fix much. These self-proclaimed principal police, laugh-out-loud libertarians are always ready with a Twitter thread, a lecture, and enough self-righteousness to power a small country. Left libertarian tards botched it so badly. It's time to pack it up and leave the party and maybe invest in some self-reflection while you're at it. Now, Ross is free and the memes are writing themselves. Will he do a victory lap on podcasts? Maybe write a book titled How I Accidentally Reinvented Crime and Crypto? Whatever he does, one thing's for sure. He's got a lifetime of Libertarian conference invites ahead of him. This is going to make for a great movie and an even better episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. Ross Ulbricht's pardon isn't just the end of his imprisonment. It's a moment that'll go down as an unpredictable mix of justice, political theater, and what looks like sheer coincidence. Trump made the right decision, even if it seemed like it was one of his many gut calls that magically aligned with a decade of libertarian activism. Even though on with Tim Pool right before he went on stage, he was discussing pardoning Julian Assange, probably just made a mistake in his speech when he mentioned Ross Ulbricht. It doesn't matter. The Mises Caucus made it happen. Trump lived up to his promise. Libertarians won. Lynn Ulbricht won. And the system that wanted Ross buried lost. Against all odds, Ross walked out free. And that's a headline. A few years ago, nobody saw coming.
Middle MAGA.